Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to the Niche Cast. We are here on Tuesday, the 24th of October. We are from the Niche Case, the niche-case.com. We've got some fantastic yarns on our website at the moment, so check it out. We've got Plunket Shield team list breakdown and a Plunket Shield first round breakdown. Also got some takeaways from the Wellington Phoenix draw against Western Sydney Wanderers, and the Women's National League weekend debrief is live. So all those things are live for you on the Tuesday, as of this Tuesday. And we're here to talk our way through some Kiwi sporting matters. But first, we need to take a moment of commiserations, remembrance. If you got a bottle handy, pour some out. If you got the Aotearoa vitamins handy, spark one up. Whatever else you want to do it now, because we're going to take a moment of remembrance for Steven Adams and the 2023-2024 NBA season. It's not quite like RIP. Well, it is RIP for this season. Rest in peace, Steven Adams. Like, literally rest in peace. Because you need to rest, because you've had a bung knee for at least a year. And it's... I'm also pouring one out for my takes from last week's podcast, last Thursday podcast, about like Steven Adams. Is he really that injury prone? Couple days later, Steven Adams.
No, I mean the same thing still applies, doesn't it? It's still only one injury.
Yeah, I'm getting around to it. Like, let me just talk through my. This is a funeral speech. You don't interrupt the funeral speech. You know, I'm trying to RIP Steven Adams.
Get the old heckles from the crowd going.
Yeah. What the fuck? Shut up. I lost my train of thought. But Steven Adams, a couple days after we talked through Steven Adams and encouraging signs for the NBA season, Steven Adams has been ruled out for the NBA season. He needs surgery. And it's you called it a shambles. And I was after I saw the news, I was kind of processing. I was like, this is super weird. This is not like a normal thing. What is the whole situation? It's literally been like almost a year of Steven Adams and this knee injury. As you said, he's not injury prone. He's just got a really weird situation with his knee, which involves a lot of medical opinions apparently, and just a whole lot of weird antics from the Grizzlies. Do like the Memphis Grizzlies, but they now have a couple of notches of weirdness as far as how they handle matters. You did call it a shambles in our Monday newsletter. So if you do like the Niche Case, if you do appreciate what we're doing and you want more Kiwi sports content, sign up to our newsletter via Substack, thenichecase.substack.com, because Nico the Wildcard did drop a couple of paragraphs about this injury, and I'm actually going to pull it up. How about that? Let me just pull it up for you, because you highlighted a few key points in what made this so weird. Also, part of that newsletter, we had paragraphs about the Kiwis, the Kiwi Ferns, and some cricket stats. The Wildcard did some Chris Wood stats there. We've also got the Women's National League Team of the Week. So that's the Monday newsletter. Mandatory reading for any hearty Kiwi sports fans, and it includes this paragraph. It says, "This is a shambles. Adams injured his knee in January, and it's only now in October that he's having surgery. At the time, they said it was going to be 4 to 6 weeks before he'd be reassessed with the hope towards returning. Then even after that, they never officially ruled him out for the postseason. At exit interviews, the general manager said the approach will be non-surgical and that the expectation was he'd be ready for preseason. It was looking sharp, going through all the scrimmages, getting rave reviews from his teammates, limited minutes in the actual friendly games, but that's normal procedure in the NBA, except now that initial 4 to 6 week time frame has become 18 months. All of a sudden, just like that. It's a bummer. I'm checking out of NBA basketball right now because Steven Adams isn't there. Don't really care what else happens. I don't know, like, Steven Adams is Steven Adams. I don't think, like, surely he's doing everything he can to be healthy. He seems like that type of joker. Like, he's not out on the piss. He's not running a marathon with a bung knee, right? Like, he might have done some hunting. He might have done some farming on his knee, but I'd suggest that he's ticking all the boxes. He's probably doing cryotherapy as well. He's probably getting in the ocean as well. He's probably, motion is lotion, so he's on the bike working through that knee. But it's just so weird, and it's a bummer.
It's completely weird. I've been feeling like this thing was weird from the get-go, because first of all, the way he suffered the injury was weird. It was like it's not weird in a, weird in one of those, it was just such an unlikely kind of thing way. Like the kind of, he was diving on the floor to retrieve a loose ball, the very latter stages of the fourth quarter of what I'm pretty sure was a win over the Phoenix Suns, or maybe it was a loss. I don't know. Either way, I remember thinking the result wasn't really up for grabs. It's just Steven Adams being Steven Adams. Loose ball around the half court, and he just dives for it and hurt his knee somehow. And you didn't know straight away any kind of the severity, but I mean, yeah, I remember talking about this on the podcast when it happened and saying it feels like they've misdiagnosed him here somehow. And I remember you saying like, yeah, but it's an NBA medical team. Like, you sort of got to give them the benefit of the doubt, which yes, it's true. But then now I think even the Memphis media folks are starting to think, well, perhaps that is what happened. Like they clearly didn't get this right the first time. But then that's not even, the first time isn't even when they declined the surgery. That's just like the 4 to 6 weeks thing. Okay, it's worse than we first thought. That kind of stuff can happen like that, and it does happen relatively often where the expected time frame of return is, it turns out to be a little bit long. Oh, we're going to hold him back another couple of weeks because he's not quite responding or whatever. But they had like, I don't know, when does the NBA season finish? Like June or something? They had 3 or 4 or 5 months or something of him just going through his rehabs, wondering about could he be back before the end of the season. Then eventually, finally, they come around to that thing where they're talking about the non-surgical approach and how he's just going to be working on rehabs all off season. And he did. He was doing all that stuff. You saw lots of training videos, and I want to go back and look at his Media's Day stuff now and like see if I can catch a vibe of him having any kind of doubt or hesitation talking about it. Because I remember he was a little more hesitant than the team was talking about his recovery. But then that might have just also been Steven Adams's natural, like, kind of casual tone compared to the very sort of business-like NBA suit type conversational, or not even conversational, just the formal way those kind of guys speak, especially in America. So I don't know. I do want to have a look at back in there and see if I can find any clues. But it just seemed like everything was progressing fine, and then all of a sudden it turns out, no, actually it's the worst case scenario. But you'd imagine he could have had this surgery in February, a few weeks after he suffered the injury the first time, in which case he could be back before, he could have been back by like the trade deadline of the upcoming season. It's just, yeah, weird is a good word for it. It's something doesn't make sense about this whole thing. And there is a rumor that he sort of it's not a rumor. One of the media guys, I heard him say it, which means that it happened, because those guys don't throw those things out lightly. That Adams did go to Los Angeles at one point and get a second opinion on his knee. But again, that's another normal procedure, is that guys will do that. I remember like the worst case scenario of that was when Kawhi Leonard was with the Spurs and he went and got another opinion on his injured knee, which contradicted what the Spurs had been saying. And then he specifically believed his guy at the expense of the Spurs, and it caused a big fallout with which ended up with him being traded. Adams isn't going to do something like that, but I think it is pretty normal for anyone when you get a relatively serious injury in that position, for an NBA player to go get a second opinion. I don't think that's rare at all. And I don't think that's like a backhanded thing going against his team, but it does seem like maybe the second opinion said something that the team didn't. And I did note that they've said the Grizzlies have changed their medical provider or their official medical partner or whatever during this off season, which I don't think means like their medical team, like physio and team doctor and stuff. I think that's more like the which sort of private clinic they use for the serious stuff, like for example surgery, which is what Stephen Adams is going to be going through now. Um, yeah, no, something just doesn't add up about it, but it's unfortunate, specifically even more so because that's our only Kiwi in the NBA right now, and it's not going to be the same without him. You know, the NBA got boring last year when he wasn't playing. Now there's a whole season without him. It's not fair. It's not fair.
There is, like, the Memphis Grizzlies do have a habit of being incredibly vague and
Yes, that's true.
To the point where it's like, yuck. Like the whole Ja Morant situation, the Memphis Grizzlies like were so vague. They like Ja Morant didn't even serve any punishment until he's missing games for this season. But like the Memphis Grizzlies,
And that's
were like,
an NBA punishment.
yeah, the Grizzlies were like, just shut up shop. We'll look after you. You can just go away, and we'll pretend like it didn't exist. And now that is followed up with the Steven Adams situation, where like I don't know, like you just if it's a like as you said when the injury happened, like as the Grizzlies were finishing the season, we were all kind of hopeful that Steven Adams might reappear. And he just stayed out, and there was never any update. It was just like, oh, he's out for another couple of weeks. So, well, whatever you guys are doing, it's a bit weird. And that's just kind of the aftertaste left by recent events with the Memphis Grizzlies. So, I'm a Steven Adams fan. Let's say that. I'm not necessarily a Memphis Grizzlies fan right now. I'm a Steven Adams fan, and we'll see how it goes. There is a difference. Like, it wasn't a torn ACL, right? Like, it was a sprained MCL.
PCL, I think.
But it was a sprain.
Posterior cruciate ligament. So it was a ligament injury. Well, I don't know that they've said. They said it was a sprain, but now he's having surgery on it, which suggests it's not a sprain. It suggests there must have been a tear involved. I don't know, but that's not what they said in the one of the few times where you got actual clear information from them was when they did the second update and said that was the injury, a PCL sprain. Yeah, you're not wrong about the vagueness. Like, they've been shady the whole way through, and when you just seems like it just makes it seem like you got something to hide or cover up when that's the case. Even if you don't, it's just that's why you chuck the information out there and let people do with it what they will, as long as it's the truth, you know.
The reason I say sprain is because I do remember, like, Sam Walker had a sprained ACL for the Roosters.
Interesting.
And that is everything I heard about that was like, because I'm thinking Kane Williamson. Well, if Kane Williamson tore his ACL earlier this year, and then he came back to play cricket this year, is Kane, like, whoever's working with Kane Williamson, go work with the Memphis Grizzlies, because maybe you can, shout some things out there. Like, USA and Americans, they do love they do big up their medical abilities over in America, even though it's pretty hard for regular folks to access those medical abilities. But maybe if Kane Williamson's recovering from a torn ACL back in time for a World Cup to score runs and then break his thumb, not related, maybe Kane Williamson should be, hooking Steven Adams up with some actual knee specialists. However, in my expert medical opinion, a straight up torn ACL might be easier to deal with than the sprain stuff, because the sprain is kind of like ongoing. There's no actual tear. But again, I'm just talking out my backside because obviously I don't know. But those are the things that I was pondering through that situation.
Well, I got a physio I could send him to. I've been seeing a physio for a sore knee. I got to go back in a couple of days. But mine was a cartilage thing. But he was doing. I remember him doing this, like, these tests. It was just sort of like sit on the table, leg outstretched, and like, can you feel this? Bend your knee this way, kind of that kind of stuff. And he said, basically, those sort of internal injuries are almost all either cartilage or ligament, and that it's really hard to test for cartilage, but it's not so hard to test for ligament. So you test for ligament, and if it's not that, then it's probably cartilage, which is what happened with me. But then um, Stephen Adams is a ligament, which is supposed to be the easy one to test for. Of course, I got no idea what I'm talking about beyond just the surface level exact verbatim words that the physio told me. I got no clue, but like that's a common injury. Those ACL more than PCL. I think PCL is a little probably a bit harder, but I would have thought that NBA teams would see that fairly often. I don't know, but then also I guess everyone's a little bit different and everyone responds differently. But I think at this point it feels safe to say that he must have got a misdiagnosis at the start, because I don't know how they could have thought that an injury that maybe requires surgery or maybe requires several months of rehab could leave him with an option to return in 4 weeks. I don't think that adds up in any way, shape, or form.
We might need some mindfulness if you've got that ready over there.
I do. I got a 3-word mindfulness from Thich Nhat Hanh. It's as long as his name. Nice and simple. Steven Adams will probably enjoy this one right about now. Just goes, breathe, you're alive.
I'm sure Stephen Adams and anyone else, you're breathing, you're alive, you're happy to be here, grateful. Kia kaha. I do want to shout out anyone who is part of our Patreon whānau and anyone with a paid Substack subscription. We will be recording our subscriber podcast tomorrow. So if you've got any Kiwi sports thoughts, queries, comments, questions, or ideas that you want us to talk through tomorrow for our subscriber podcast, leave a comment on the Patreon feed or on Substack, and we'll get around to discussing it. Otherwise, we will be going deep into probably some we're in a bit of a lull for the Blackcaps, which we will discuss in a jiffy. But there's a lot of Plunket Shield to discuss and anything else our Patreon whānau and paid Substack subscribers want us to talk about. We will be rolling through it in tomorrow's subscriber podcast. Patreon is a great way to support the Niche Case straight up the guts. Patreon.com/EL Niche Case. Easy, generous, no dramas. You get access to the subscriber podcast every week, and it's a great way to support and fund the Niche Case directly, as well as upgrading your newsletter Substack subscription to a paid Substack subscription. Then you can also get access to the subscriber podcast. We send out the subscriber podcast through Patreon and Substack for the paid Substack subscribers. So those are easy ways to donate to the Niche Case. You can make a one-off donation through Buy Me a Coffee, and of course, your presence is more than enough. Check out the website, follow us on all the social media thingamajigs, and big up yourself, love yourself. The Blackcaps did lose to India, and we won't see the Blackcaps again for a couple of days. They're not scheduled to play until Saturday, 6 p.m. kickoff in Dharamsala against the Aussies. And that's the start of a little 2-game Dharamsala. Oh, no, because did they play India in Dharamsala? They must have done that.
Yeah, they did. They did.
So they'll be in action again on Saturday, and they did lose to India. And I don't care. I think it's actually quite good because everyone's talking up India now, and everyone thinks India is going to win the World Cup because they're winning pool games. And of course, India are the favorites. India are playing in home conditions. They're playing good cricket. But I think it was a really important game for the Blackcaps to take some information from, to get some things on tape, to try some tactics, to try some strategies against India, see what works, see what doesn't work, and take that forward to the knockout games, because to win this World Cup, you probably need to defeat India at some point. And I'm not too fussed about what happened in that pool game. Daryl Mitchell did go large, and Daryl Mitchell I wrote this in the newsletter yesterday. He's averaging over 50 in tests and ODIs. Daryl Mitchell currently has the highest ever averages for New Zealand cricketers in tests and ODIs right now. So that's pretty good. Like, Daryl Mitchell's pretty good at cricket. But it wasn't the Blackcaps' best game. But I do think, like, just chalk it up to the cricketing gods and keep learning, because it does kind of take the Blackcaps out of the spotlight. They're not going to play for a few days. A lot of other teams are going to play, and they do have a run of big games. Next up, Australia, after playing India. Then I think they play South Africa. So it's a really interesting stage for the Blackcaps, especially because they're playing the same team over and over again as far as the players they're selecting, the first 11 they are selecting. And I'm curious how that looks in the next couple of games, because it's pretty tough to keep rolling out the same 11 in these conditions that you're seeing in India. And also you're playing the best teams you are likely to play in the semi-finals. So are you going to roll out your pure first 11 against Australia and South Africa and India, knowing that you're then going to play them in the semi-finals? Kane Williamson's played one game, Jimmy Neesham's played one game, Tim Southee and Ish Sodhi are yet to play. So there are options, and I don't think it's a case of the Blackcaps just like not giving a shit and taking the piss. But I do think there is a chance for the Blackcaps to tinker, to try some things strictly in preparation for the semi-finals, assuming they can make the semi-finals.
Which they should do with 6 wins, I think, especially because we're not seeing teams at the bottom just being easy beats and losing every game. Like Afghanistan beat Pakistan last night. They've won another big one. Netherlands have got a win on the board. Like the teams competing for the semi-finals are dropping points against anyone. They're sharing them around, which means I think 6 wins will pretty much 95% certainly get you through to the next round. Definitely if you've got a decent net run rate, which the Blackcaps do have a pretty good net run rate, and they are 4-1. And have games remaining against Australia, Sri Lanka, South Africa, and I think it is Pakistan, isn't it? Not necessarily in that order. There's winnable games there, and if they win 2 out of the remaining 4, then that should be enough. If they win 3 out of the remaining 4, we're talking about a first or second seed going into the semis, which doesn't really mean anything other than perhaps maybe getting a little bit more control over who you might want to play in the knockouts, or, for example, avoiding India. Although I'm less scared about playing India in a semi-final than I would be about a final, to be honest. That might actually work out better for them if that's how it does. Although I don't think the Blackcaps will scrape through in 4th unless we see them playing worse over the next couple of weeks than what they had been to this point. This was the one that mattered the least, having got points on the board already from some of these from their previous games. So it was an opportunity to get a look at India. It was an opportunity to allow India to get a little bit overcooked, and just like India's biggest threat in this tournament isn't so much anyone else as it is themselves, and just the absolute enormous pressure of an Indian cricket team playing in India, being expected to win the ODI World Cup. I want them under as much pressure as possible, and so them winning this game might work out in the long run for the Blackcaps nicely. Did you see things that from that game where you sort of think in a semi-final or a final that would be different, like the little things where maybe they withheld some tactical things, or maybe just tried a few things where it's like, yeah, that'll be more of a factor later down the line, or because I think you can pinpoint aspects of the game which didn't go so well. Like they didn't get early wickets was probably the main thing. So I don't think their total was terrible, and India only chased it down with 2 overs to go. But you got to get early wickets if you want it, particularly because that's the strategy for the Blackcaps. They didn't get that. I don't know if there's a way that they can do better other than just like try hit your lines and lengths and hope for a mistake now and then. But did you see things like that, like little aspects that'd be different one way or another come a knockout game?
No, because I think the Blackcaps want to win that game. So they're just trying to play cricket and win the game. But what it does do is it gives the Blackcaps, and now playing Australia, then South Africa, they have first-hand experience of what tendencies opponents have, what they like to do, what they don't like to do, what positions they want to be in, any weaknesses, any strengths, because we do know the Blackcaps are one of the better researched and prepared teams in the world. That is why they are good at World Cups. That's why we are so positive about the Blackcaps. Because like you do, like, even with the selections, like if you tinker with the selections, no matter who's playing, you're going out there to win. Like, it's not like you're giving up the contest or giving up the game, but it's more about gathering information to prepare for semi-finals and finals. So it's more like just go out there, play the cricket. We've got things we want to do. We'll try to do them. It's going to be tough, but we're here to play international cricket. And that gives you the information. Because, like, yeah, they might reflect on some skills they didn't execute, some moments, some lapses of concentration, but we also know Kane Williamson's going to come back into the team at some point. Kane Williamson didn't play that game, and they still scored 270 runs or whatever. So that's all good. And then you might see like someone like Tim Southey, who, yeah, he might not be a first 11 lad right now, but he is someone with a lot of experience in India as well. And he might be preparing for those type of moments, or it's just a case of we got these things on tape, these things didn't work, these things did work, but we're also gathering information from all these games and all these performances and all the pitches. Because the teams that are sucking at this World Cup, they can't read the pitches, they can't read conditions, most notably England. And there's a lot of, like, I did notice that a lot of the talk about ODI cricket comes from the nations who, like the big nations. You're not really, like, Netherlands aren't talking about the demise of ODI cricket. Afghanistan aren't talking about the demise of ODI cricket. They love it. The Blackcaps love it. We are here to play ODI cricket, and, like, let's just leave all the bigger picture, grandiose thinking aside, and let's just try to enjoy games of ODI cricket. But that is to say that England suck at reading the situation. Whether it's the situation for the toss or whether it's the situation in games.
The situation of the sport.
Yeah, well, that too. But it's like you can get into all these weeds about, like, England not preparing well and all this other stuff, but they don't read things well. We know the Blackcaps can adapt to any situation and any conditions, and they will be gathering so much information about the way the pitches are playing. You know, when the dew's coming in, how to bowl, like when you need to start bowling slower balls and when you need to start ramping up the swing and hit a heavy length and bowl bounces and attack a bowler. All that stuff is just information. It's just data, and that's what the Blackcaps are good at. So I think that's what I think.
Yeah, I do. Now that I've seen the pattern, I think I can enjoy the more of a chuckle over the ongoing cycle of when England are good, they're saving cricket, and when England are bad, cricket's in a disastrous place and needs someone to save it. Like this, it's a little bit of a colonial mindset, isn't it? It's like this thing only counts if we're the ones who are fixing it. It's fine, you know. India's a fantastic ODI team right now. The Blackcaps are a fantastic ODI team. Afghanistan and Netherlands are making this Cricket World Cup really fun. You know, that's saving ODI cricket on its own. And I think everyone else is probably enjoying England being quite bad. And well, I would say and Australia, but I actually think Australia might not be bad. They just lost to India and South Africa, who are going to beat a lot of other teams. So a little bit worried about them coming up and beating them, putting them in a place where they might get make it a lot harder to make the knockouts. That's a very important thing for the Blackcaps.
Blackcaps have lost to India. They might lose to South Africa, just like Australia as well. We need to be prepared for that. we do have plenty of Kiwi sports to touch on, so we don't need to dive deep into this, but I do, upon reflection, I do find it hilarious how the format or the type of cricket that is being saved and the type of cricket in demise literally depends on what England's good at or not good at. Like, that is genuinely hilarious.
And probably speaks to what you're saying before about how large portion of the because every country has their own specific media. Like the Blackcaps have folks that just cover predominantly the Blackcaps from a Blackcaps point of view. We're part of that. We're part of that scene, you know. But the stuff that covers the overarching, all of Cricinfo and other websites that do things like that, predominantly does come from England, Australia, and India. Like that is the dominant sort of force in where like which stories get told and what narratives get lent upon and whatever. So I suppose that some of that's to be expected. But to be fair, not hearing a lot about the death of ODI cricket from Australians at a time where their ODI team hasn't been as good as it has been in the past. You know, I think they seem to be able to cop it a little bit better. So there is some there is a difference there. I will admit.
I also just thought about this. I don't know. I haven't like brainstormed through this take, but it's a bit like crypto, where the people who are telling you about crypto are heavily invested in crypto, and it's like a lot of the people who are telling you about the domination and takeover of T20 cricket are also invested in T20 cricket in some way, shape, or form, and that's quite interesting. But it's not as interesting as Plunket Shield cricket. As I said, we'll get into some nooks and crannies about Plunket Shield cricket in our subscriber podcast. But for a general overview of round one, there was Central Districts defeated Auckland in Auckland, and that's quite interesting because I saw that Auckland lost 2 of 3 games at Eden Park out of Oval. Shout out to what I imagine would have been a pretty crazy Saturday to play cricket at Eden Park out of Oval. Meanwhile, New Zealand A are playing Tonga A, Kiwi Ferns are playing Tonga, and Kiwis are playing Samoa inside Eden Park. Like, that would have been pretty crazy. But Auckland, they're not very good at Eden Park, the outer oval. And they got absolutely smoked by Central Districts. They were the only home team to lose this round. Northern Districts hosted Otago. They got a win there. And Wellington defeated Canterbury at the Basin Reserve in Wellington. Obviously, some fantastic performers. Greg Hay and Sandeep Patel hit centuries. Scott Kugelheim snared 8 wickets in the game against Otago, and that's relevant because he was a key figure in the New Zealand A fixtures against Australia A, as was Tom Bruce, and Tom Bruce scored runs straight away. Well, the whole central lineup was pretty damn good as well because Greg Hay, Tom Bruce, and Brad Shamullian all average over 40. Then you got Doug Bracewell, Blair Tickner, Ajaz Patel, Brett Randall doing their thing with the ball. Ray Toole, lefty as well. And Wellington defeated Canterbury. Wellington were pretty damn impressive themselves. I did do a bit of research about Nick Greenwood, who represents Jersey, which is apparently some island off the coast of England. So he's a big up Jersey international. Nick Greenwood, he scored a 70-odd. Muhammad Abbas continues to look really good. He took some wickets with his lefty seam. He also scored runs. Wellington's all-rounder Nathan Smith, he scored runs and took wickets as well. And he's almost at the all-rounder 30 average benchmark, averaging over 30 with the bat and under 30 with the ball. So Nathan Smith's a good cricketer. And Canterbury, they rolled out a pretty young lineup, and I think that's why they lost, because they didn't have, like, for all my hype, they didn't have Henry Shipley, they didn't have Will O'Rourke, Henry Nichols wasn't there. So they did have a young lineup, and I saw Dylan Hunter. He's an interesting geezer. He's from Australia who's moved across to try and pursue a Blackcaps dream. Didn't know it, but then I saw his Cricinfo profile, and apparently he's 39 years old. So shout out to him. Still battling.
That can't be right, surely.
Still doing his thing. And he to try and salvage the innings, he scored 28 runs off 91, which for all my research, Dylan Hunter was a monster white ball batter in Australia, playing in Newcastle and in the Sydney competition. So he seems like a pretty aggressive batter, but and this was his first class game, so he hasn't played Sheffield Shield cricket for New South Wales or any other team as well. So he's an interesting lad to watch out for Canterbury. Like, he's obviously a lot older than the younger players Canterbury played, but he was in his first game. Despite Canterbury's loss, Zach Folks was absolutely incredible. This dude he's so skillful. I reckon he's one of the most skillful youngsters in Aotearoa. And by that I mean he's catching the outside edge of right-handers, he's catching the outside edge of left-handers, and he's bowling hoop and in-swingers to skittle the stumps of right-handers as well. He was doing all of that last summer, and he did it again against Wellington. I think he picked up 7 wickets in the game, and he also opened the batting. He wasn't that great opening the batting, but he opened the batting. So he's really good, and all of that fits into this kind of nice little framework that I thought about, where you have that elite kind of veteran talent that we know the Blackcaps test team do love. Like Greg Hayes scored a century. Kugelheim and Bruce followed on from their A squad mahi. Yeah, they were, and then like the central lineup, they got a lot of veterans. Sean Solier scored runs for Auckland. George Worker scored runs for Auckland. A lot of veterans doing some good things. Did I miss anyone? Maybe. I don't know. But then there's also really, really talented youngsters. And the best thing with these youngsters is to just let them cook in domestic cricket. Let them play Plunket Shield, let them play through the formats, give them some A games and whatnot. And that's an important point, because I am extremely positive about the amount of talent coming through Blackcaps pipelines. Muhammad Abbas, he's a freak. Zach Folks is a freak. Fraser Sheets, like 25 years old, he's averaging in the mid-20s in first-class cricket over a large sample size. He's exceptional. Sandeep Patel scored a century, and he was the best batter in the Otago versus Northern game. He's only 24 years old, playing in his second or third first-class game. Ashok took some wickets for Auckland. It wasn't a great performance, but he took wickets. You also have Ben Lockrose is playing as a spinner for Otago. Ben Sears, he's bowling fast. Nick Greenwood's only in his early 20s as well for Wellington. Nathan Smith's in his mid-20s as well. So there was like there's this really impressive divide. And shout out to the veterans. Joe Carter also scored runs for Northern Districts. So, but you've got like both bases covered. And anyone who is anxious or concerned about the development of Blackcaps cricket in the men's system, actually tune in. Because these youngsters in the Plunket Shield right now, and we'll see it in the Ford Trophy, you'll see it on TV in the Super Smash, these young cricketers are really, really, really good. Like the amount of dudes who are averaging over 40 with the bat, in a small sample size, but they've scored runs immediately in Plunket Shield cricket. I've never seen that before. You've got Henry Shipley and Willow Rourke didn't even play. And then you've got Ben Sears bowling really fast, and you've got someone like Zach Folks moving the ball both ways. And Fraser Sheet just taking wickets as he always does. Like the amount of talent coming through the Plunket Shield, the Blackcaps pipeline is immense, but you always need the Matua, the Ko-Matua leading the way. And that's why guys like Scott Kugelheim, Tom Bruce, Greg Hay, those leaders are important, because those are the dudes who scored the most runs, took the most wickets for New Zealand A against Australia A. Those are the dudes on the fringes of the test squad. That's what makes the Blackcaps so good at the highest level, is that they have mature players to call upon. But then you've got the freaky young talent that is always putting pressure and demanding excellence from the elder statesmen. Like Rachin Ravindra is a young freak. Like he's a cricketing guru. He's mature as well as incredibly skillful. And if you've got that mix, the cream rises to the top. Otherwise, there's kind of a natural pecking order in place as well. But it's not just like the runs and wickets that the youngsters are churning out. It's the skill. It's the freaky talent. It's the X factor that is evident with bat and ball.
Yeah, I did read. There's been obviously a bit of a spotlight on Rachin Ravindra lately. I did read a piece on him about like the diligence, like the work he puts into his game, just in his own time, not even in Blackcaps camps. But there was like some story about how his dad was coaching a Wellington club side that went and played some games in India, and he went along in order to just get in net sessions and just get accustomed to batting in Indian conditions. This was earlier this year, knowing the World Cup was coming up, and he was competing for a spot there. He wasn't even guaranteed a spot there. You know, at that point, you might have thought he probably wouldn't make the squad, but he's out there like, just leveling up at the age that he is that's why he's improving as fast as he is. Zachary Folks, I see, is 21 years old and bowling average under 21. You're doing all right if your bowling average is below your age, as a youngster anyway. I think maybe 39-year-old fella is a different story, but
that's not even his best format. I think he's got a 17 average in T20 cricket, maybe with the ball.
I can tell you that he has a 15.3 average in T20s, 25.75. And let's say he hasn't played a lot. Like 7 matches is the most he's played in any format, but that's normally players start badly and then get better as they get more experienced. If you start like that, you've got something gone. And I noticed as well, though, batting average of 11.75 he was not anywhere near an opening batsman last year. He is now an opening batsman this year, averaging 11.75. So he would make the White Ferns on that form, but it'll take a little while for him to get into the Blackcaps. But the fact is, like you said, the fact he's opening the batting at all, as a dude who's come in and shown like phenomenal skills for his age as a seam bowler, and now he's being asked to open in like his 7th first-class game. That alone, that vote of confidence alone, he could have got 2 golden ducks. That vote of confidence alone says this dude's got something extra and like elevates him even more in the prospect rankings, because you know how much Blackcaps love batters who can bowl and bowlers who can bat.
I will make this clear. He is probably only opening because other players aren't available.
Yeah.
So Chad Bowes didn't play, Reece Mariu didn't play, Henry Nichols didn't play. So
Tom Latham didn't play.
Yeah, fair enough.
Tom Latham normally doesn't play, but still.
Henry Shipley didn't play. He's pretty good batting as well. Zach Folks is usually going to bat like 5 to 7, probably. Maybe in a full-strength Canterbury lineup, he's batting 8. Maybe in a full-strength Canterbury lineup, he's not even playing. How about that? But he's the bloke they put into open with other players unavailable. And he also banged that century in Australia, the T20 Max that I've referenced a few times as well. So he can, he can score runs. So a lot of fantastic talent on display. And the next round of games starts on Saturday. So we'll dive deeper. As I said, tomorrow, the Kiwi cricket landscape might preview those games on Thursday as well. We'll see how we go. Do have 2 deep dives on our website right now that you can read about for Plunket Shield information. As I said, Saturday at Eden Park, fantastic day of rugby league. And it was to me, it was a showcase of Aotearoa Rugby League status right now. Because the young talent on display in the A game was immense. Many of the Tongan A players come from grassroots clubs in Aotearoa. So that's a reflection on the strength of the community rugby league in Aotearoa. It was a bit hard to get a gauge on the game and the performers, but yeah, just as a process of highlighting some of the young talent in Aotearoa, I thought it was a great showcase. And considering what happened to Samoa in the Kiwis test, I obviously want to see Samoa versus Tonga at Eden Park. Like, if that happens, that will be the biggest thing in rugby league. That will be bigger than State of Origin. If you had Samoa versus Tonga at Eden Park, it's a sellout. It's absolute mayhem. It's everything we love about those two nations going at it in sport. There's no 18 for Samoa, but Tonga's got an 18. Like, Tonga just seems to have their rugby league shit sorted far better than Samoa. And I'll also highlight that Samoa conceded 88 points in 2 games against Australia and Aotearoa, and I find it interesting when you're playing in front of that type of crowd, predominantly Samoan. Auckland is the Polynesian capital of the world. Your national pride is on display. The Samoan culture's put in the spotlight, and you concede 50 points. Like, I don't think that's a good sign. Like, that is the biggest. To me, that's the biggest, best Samoan atmosphere of recent years, and you concede 50 points. That's not good. And they did concede 88 points against Australia and the Kiwis. So to beat, like, this is a weird way of framing it, but I'm far higher on Tongan rugby league than I am Samoan rugby league right now. And obviously Tonga are over in England. They played a highly competitive first game against England. That series is going to be competitive. And Tonga rolled out an A game, which Samoa haven't done. So, yeah, in keeping with the men's rugby league, the Kiwis, they were too good for Tonga. So a lot of fun stuff was happening. Like, all the Kiwis were pretty good. We had some funky moments. Obviously, Joey Manu playing a set with his shirt off was pretty fun. And then you had, like, other real footy nerd type of things, like Shans Nickel-Klokstad showing his class at fullback. And another miscellaneous note, the 2 Kiwis tests in Aotearoa, the last 2 Kiwis tests in Aotearoa, have featured 1 Warriors player. Obviously, I'm referring to the Tongan test last year, where there were no Warriors players. And then this year, 1 Warriors player, Shans Nickel-Klokstad. Obviously, Sean Johnson was really good in commentary. However, there were still these storylines after the game about the Kiwis winning without Sean Johnson. It's like, yeah, no shit. The Kiwis are good at rugby league. The Kiwis have 4 or 5 legitimate halves options. And I don't even know if Sean Johnson plays for the Kiwis again.
The way he was talking about it on comms, it sounds like he's thinking that as well.
And fair enough. Like, I mean, to be honest, if he wants to commentate, like, I'll be happy for that. Like, he's far better than any Australian commentator.
He's good. Yeah,
he's
good on
fantastic. The mic. But again, that is to say, Aotearoa Kiwis Rugby League and the Warriors are not really connected. Because the Aotearoa Kiwis have immense depth. Some of it does involve the Warriors who were playing in that A game, but there's not going to be less Kiwi NRL players for Australian clubs in the coming years. Like, that's not decreasing. Regardless of how the Warriors build out their system, both are going to increase dramatically. You had like Kieran Foran, starting dummy half, big minutes. He was fantastic. And I talked about him pre-game about his Aotearoa Kiwis mana, and then he's starting hooker for like 50 minutes or something crazy. That was impressive. And I will note, Manu Brown, like, again, the Samoans were pretty intense, like, in singling out the Samoans and the Kiwis lineup. But again, I will highlight, there's not many Tongans playing for the Aotearoa Kiwis, right? Because those Tongans play for Tonga. There's a lot of Samoans playing for the Aotearoa Kiwis who don't want to play for Samoa. So, I mean, that's not my opinion. That's just what is evident in the team list. So then Samoa comes out like full hundies, a bit excessive in their aggression towards some of their, Usos. And then they get 50 points put on them. And Fa'amanu Brown, he only played 22 minutes in the second half, but he had a direct involvement in a number of those tries that took the score out to 50 points. So if Fa'amanu Brown's not on the field for some of those moments, maybe the Kiwis don't score 50 points. And I thought he was pretty good coming off the bench after Foran had done a lot of the hard mahi. Debutants were fantastic. Matthew Tomoko, Griffin Neem, and Leo Thompson. They were immense coming off the bench. Let alone the quartet of forwards. Fisher Harris, Moses Leota, Joseph Tarpany, and Nelson Asafa Solomona. They just dominated the whole game. And again, I don't know why I keep thinking about these wrinkles, because I did see this is how I knew this was going to be a pretty emotional encounter, because national anthem's going and Luciano Leilua has Dawn Raid written on his wristbands.
Yeah, that's right.
So maybe he's referencing Dawn Raid Entertainment, the big up South Auckland hip hop extraordinaire. Shout out to that old shop that used to be in Papatoe, Dawn Raid Entertainment. But he's probably mentioning in reference to the Dawn Raids that happen in Auckland. A hugely unfortunate situation that we as half Pākehā, half Palangis, we're not proud of. But you knew shit was real. And I think that Samoan team, there was a lot more emotion for the game in Auckland against the Kiwis than there was in the Australian Townsville game. And I was curious to see that, because you also had, Leilua with Dawn Raid written on his, holding his wristband up. So he was making a little
bawling
protest.
His eyes out too, tears streaming down his cheek during the anthem.
They were there to make a statement. Unfortunately, that statement was 50-0. And so they were emotional, they were hostile, cool. But Fisher Harris and Moses Leota run the Penrith Panthers. So any other player coming out of that Panthers system, Fisher Harris and Leota are their big brothers. And I think that was on display. Spencer Leniu, for all his fire and brimstone, he's little bro to Fisher Harris and Leota. Stephen Crichton, yeah, good mate. Yeah, good. You played with us three premierships in a row. But we're the big bros here. We're the starting props in all three grand finals as well. And I think that's a sneaky element. Obviously, Leota, Samoan, Fisher Harris, one of the best in the game. And their mana from the Panthers was also evident in that Kiwis versus Samoa test as well. Any Kiwis thoughts there?
The Kieran Foran stuff was awesome, because it felt like, Kieran Foran's had a little bit of a checkered career, but I think the checkeredness of his career overshadows the longevity and consistency that he's had for a long time. He's sort of felt like someone who the reputation of him is that he's been a grizzled veteran in his last contract since he was about the age of 27 or something. He's 33 and he's still been doing the same thing all these years in the in-between, And this was a great showcase for him, to use that word again, because it wasn't just that he was elevated to start late notice, had a really nice game as well. It was the way his teammates talked about him when they're asked. That's the Kieran Foran mana there, is just listening to Sean Johnson in commentary, but it's not just him. It's dudes being interviewed afterwards talking about Foz. Yeah, great man, Foz, one of the leaders. There's so much respect there for a veteran player like that. It's I don't know. I always love when you get the opportunity to see that stuff in action and just see the influence that guys can have on their teammates around them, because that's that same thing about how leading from example, having those people to see and follow and emulate is a large part of any player's development. So you got Kieran Foran out there doing that, and then you got a few rookies out there following on the footsteps and seeing what it means to play for the Aotearoa Kiwis. And on top of that, what else did I see? Chance Nickel-Klokstad doing underrated things as always. I think Sean Johnson as well. Give him another shout out. That had a point about how he feels that Nickel Clockstar's passing is so underrated as part of his game. Like, yeah, that's something we have talked about on this podcast. It is definitely an underrated aspect of his game. And Johnson knows that better than anyone because he's often the guy who passes it to him before he passes it to Watson Zelezniak or whoever. In this case, Jermaine Isako, I think it was. And what else did I see? I saw James Fisher-Harris being the absolute man throughout. Northlander captaining the Kiwis, just as there was a Northlander Kalani Goen captaining the A team as well. Beauty of a day for Northland Rugby League. And Jerome Hughes playing without a headgear was a little bit weird. He almost looked as naked as Joey Manu with his shirt off, those two contrasts. But I thought on the whole, like Samoa weren't quite where they probably expected to be, but that was a slick Kiwis outfit. Like they looked really sharp. Their backline moves were fantastic. They were barging through the middle. That looked like a team who, like, yes, they won by 50 points, and that's not always the best indication of where a team's at. But they look like a side that could trouble most, and I'm very excited to see how they shape up against Australia. I know we've had a million false dawns about like, oh, the Kiwis look good against this team, so they're going to go well against Australia, and then they don't. Like they're just repeating the problem again there. But I do think this is a team that's got something.
Yeah, well, like all those false dawns don't involve a team as talented as what there is right now, or with the depth. Like there's a long list of players not playing for the Kiwis who could play for the Kiwis at the moment. Another idea, like I don't think this will be the case because they will play the final against Australia in Hamilton, so that's going to be different. But I do think the Kiwis do like being the bad guys in some of these matchups. Like if you play Samoa or Tonga in Auckland, it's an away game for the Kiwis to some extent. And I think they do like being the boogeyman of those situations. And that is to me, that's a Fisher-Harris thing. I think Fisher-Harris just loves those situations. Yeah. And I think he's the leading the team. I don't think the Foran Brown was a late change. I think that was the plan all week. So I'd say that. And like, it's crazy for Foran because a few games for the Titans, he looked like that South African dude, class and batting in the World Cup.
Yeah, I was watching that the other night. It was
like Foran, like whether he was injured or whether he was tired. Some of the NRL games this year for Foran, he struggled to get through them, but he always got through them. Unless he was taken off by the coach, not by his own accord. Because, yeah, that might happen a few times. But, like, if you said to me during the season, yeah, Kieran Foran's going to play 50-odd minutes at hooker for the Kiwis at the end of the year, I'll be like, what? And then he did it, and he's the man. Kiwi Ferns defeated Tonga. Unfortunately, Amelia Pasakala suffered I think she's got a dislocated ankle, which is horrible. Also didn't know that you could get red carded for a hip drop, but that happened. But it was really impressive for her, and I'm fascinated to see how she comes back from this injury because the game was in the balance at halftime. I think it was like 10-6 or something like that. And then Pasakala from dummy half scored a try. And unfortunately, her next run, I think she suffered the injury and the red card happened. So then it was kind of the game, like Tonga, they were valiant in their efforts, especially in that second half playing down a player. But that was part of like the whole emotion of watching those three games back to back to back. Because you had that situation before the Samoa Kiwi stuff. But she was exceptional in a limited sample size, and she swung the game in favor of the Kiwi Ferns. So I think it's important to note that as she goes about her long recovery with a lot more clarity than apparently Stephen Adams has, there was like, Kiwi Ferns are pretty damn good as well. Like, I do think Meli Haufonga is the most exciting superstar female rugby league or union player in Aotearoa. And I have no issues saying that right now after watching the Black Ferns and whatever they're playing. Like, yeah, Ruby Tui, she's cool, she's fun. She's not Mele Haufunga. Like, Mele Haufunga is an absolute superstar of footy, and she was again on display against Tonga. Obviously, she is Tongan. Abigail Roach, though, she is fantastic. She's fast, she's mobile, she's skillful, and she is brutal in defense. Tiana Davison, she was pretty good. She made her Kiwi Ferns debut off the bench. She was really good as well. Like, I'm impressed with what the Kiwi Ferns are doing. Obviously, they lost to Australia the week before. Now they've got another game against Australia coming up, and hopefully one of these days soon we'll see the Kiwis and the Kiwi Ferns get a win over Australia, because I do think it is more possible now than it ever has been. Whether or not it happens like next weekend or maybe next year, this is the strongest I've ever felt Aotearoa Rugby League has been. Like, whether it's the depth on show with the A team, or whether it's just the pure talent in the Kiwi Ferns and the Kiwis teams, like, it's been building towards this, and we've had a few moments, you know, shining this. We've obviously documenting this every kind of week with the Kiwi NRL stuff and the NRL Wahine stuff. Because, like, Anessa Biddle, she played on the wing for the Cronulla Sharks, then she played centre for the Cronulla Sharks, now she's starting edge forward for the Kiwi Ferns, and she looked amazing in every position. Like, the talent on offer, the skill, the passion and the pride they have for Aotearoa, it's pretty cool, especially the way that these teams come together under the Aotearoa Kiwi Fern umbrella, and they welcome a lot of different cultures together. I think that's an interesting idea as well. Like, it's not like you need to be one culture to play for the Aotearoa Kiwis or the Kiwi Ferns. You can be any culture and you are welcome, and you are important. You're part of the whānau. So I think what I'm talking my way around to is you've got the pure talent. And the Kiwis didn't concede any points. So you've got the all-round defensive, attacking, skill, tactics, strategy, execution, talent stuff firing on all cylinders. But there's also culture in both teams, in both programs. And I think that is just as important as the talent, because that's what obviously the best teams always have, but that's how you get through the hard patches against Australia, is building that culture. And both teams have players who have been in that system together for a few years now. There's a bunch of players from the World Cup last year now playing for the Kiwi Ferns a year later. And that Kiwis core, like Fisher Harris, Tapine, Jerome Hughes, Joey Manu, Asafa Solomona, like Kieran Foran's been there for a while. Like, there is a core group in both teams that is building towards some pretty special stuff, I reckon.
Yeah, and a lot of that was evident even just from the anthems and the haka and the crowd atmosphere and stuff beforehand, which the Samoans brought a lot of that. As far as the crowd goes, the Samoans brought the majority of that. But like, that's still like I don't know. It just felt like what international rugby league should feel like at the end of a NRL season, which is a bit of a celebration of not just the sport, but the players at the highest level, and the cultures being represented and all that. Like, it was a bloody cool day of sporting entertainment. And I from my less in depth, much more surface level take, I will second the Mele Haufunga thing as well. When I watched of that Kiwis Ferns game, she's absolutely unreal. Like, it takes 4 people to tackle her at any given point. She's incredible. And she's so fast. Like, that's the thing. You see, she's big and strong. You're like, well, she's going to be powerful, but she's lightning quick and got quick, like, sharp footwork as well, which is, yeah, that's a rare talent right there.
I think, like, her and Matthew Tomoko are quite similar as far as centers goes, and that was on display in both games. The thing about Mele Haufunga is you've got Mele Haufunga on one edge, and against Tonga you had Abigail Roach on the other edge. That's options. And then I was talking about edge forward. So if you give Anessa Biddle the ball at edge forward, well, she was one of the best post-contact meters runners in NRLW. So now she's playing edge forward on one edge, and then you've got Otessa Pule, who is equally as powerful on the other edge. And so now the Kiwi Ferns are building out this team that has, like, Kiwis. Matthew Tomoko on one edge, Joey Mano on the other edge. Jerome Hughes on one edge, Dylan Brown on the other edge. Like, those are the type of options that really good rugby league teams need. Pardon me. And one last thing about rugby league. Like, the Samoan crowd was big for the Samoan game, but there were not a lot, but there was a decent crowd there for the Kiwi Ferns versus Tonga, and there was a decent crowd there for the A fixture prior to those games. I don't like it seems a bit hard to measure the crowd for the Kiwi Ferns game in between or before the Kiwis, but like when you look at the Black Ferns playing in the Cake Tin, the crowds didn't look a lot different. And I reckon the way the Kiwi Ferns play their rugby league, the personalities they have, the culture they have, and the results they are getting, the Kiwis aren't going to be bigger than the All Blacks. Like, let's be honest. That's okay. I can see a situation in the next 5 years where the Kiwi Ferns are bigger than the Black Ferns. And NRLW is already bigger than Super Rugby, Aupiki, or Farah Palmer Cup, or whatever you want to classify it. But I do reckon the Kiwi Ferns will be a more entertaining product than the Black Ferns, and I think they will be a better footy team than the Black Ferns as well. That's something to keep an eye on over the next few years. We also had what I consider to be a pretty positive weekend of Wellington Phoenix football. The women had a 3-0 win over the Western Sydney Wanderers, and the lads have had a 0-0 draw. I'll get my analysis out of the way before I throw it to you for some less informed analysis. I thought I didn't actually watch the women's game, so that's
you missed the good one, yeah.
Yeah. I thought the men, like, they had a 0-0 draw, but they were pretty solid and resolute in defense. And it's one of those things about football, you're away. A defensive performance like that is, can be quite impressive. But again, it was some of the young Kiwi lads on display in that defense that really caught my eye. You've talked about Finn Sermon for a while. He was reasonably impressive. And the left back. Like, he's got to be the tallest left back in the world of football. Is it Kelly Heald?
Yeah, Lucas Kelly-Hill, to be specific, because he has a twin brother who's in the academy, who's probably the third choice goalie if one of the top two goes down. And yeah, he's just as tall, but he's a goalkeeper, which is what you expect of someone who's like 1.98 meters tall. You think goalkeeper, you might think centre back, and Lucas Kelly-Hill can play centre back. But from what I've seen from him for the first team so far, and he's played all 3 games, 2 Aussie Cup games and this one, I reckon he shapes as a better left back than centre back. He's tall, but he's got a nice touch for someone that big and someone that young as well.
And he's quite fast. He's got a nice left foot, which is impressive. It's basically like Henry Shipley playing left back.
Yeah.
Which is really great. Like, fair play. It's not quite Kyle Jamison playing left back, but Henry Shipley's pretty tall. Willow Rourke or Henry Shipley playing left back is that would be interesting. And I think the style of play was quite crystal clear. They were playing out from the back, and that's what Phoenix fans should look forward to this season, is that holding possession at the back with the goalie, Alex Paulson, another young Kiwi lad who he did all the basic duties of a goalkeeper as far as stopping shots, controlling the box in the air and stuff like that. And he also made some really crisp passes out of defense. Because if you're going to play out from the back, you're going to be under pressure, and you need to be able to pass accurately under pressure. Not every goalie can do that. Not every, defensive player can do that when they're standing on their own, dead ball line or whatever you want to call it. Paulson did it. I thought Finn Sermon did it pretty well. Kelly Heald did it pretty well at left back as well. And I thought, we did highlight that the Phoenix were going to develop a lot of local young talent. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I said it last week. I don't think it's a bad thing. And after this was 0-0 draw, I think there's plenty of positive sprouts, specifically in that young local talent that is going to be pretty influential for the Phoenix this season.
It's a bit of a funny one because it's almost like the women's team and the men's team have swapped positions, because the women's team for 2 years have been probably, it's not like they're not trying to win games, and it's not like the men's team this year aren't trying to win games. Of course, that's exactly what they're trying to do. But there was a sort of give and take at play there with the women for the first 2 years, especially the first year, where it was very much like, we're trying to win games, but we're trying to win games with young players that we can bring through and try build towards something down the line, not necessarily this year. Do you think the men's team, because they have something that women's team never had, which is still like, they've got a few Kieran Forens out there, they've got Costa Barbarousis and David Ball and Scott Wooden in defense, and Bozidar Kraev and Oscar Zavada, I'd say, are less Kieran Forens and more like Shans Nickel Klokstads and Joey Manus, but like they're your star players.
Not quite as good.
Not quite as good, no. Well, Zavada might be for the context that he's at. Kraev, we'll see how he goes. He's been bounced around a few different positions, so I think he just kind of needs to settle somewhere, and we'll see what he can get up to. But yeah, there's scope for this to still be quite a good team, but it does depend a lot on how those young guys go, because you can't have 5 good players. Well, that's the other thing, is I don't even know if the veterans that they've got, I don't know if they're guys who can carry you to victory anyway. Like we saw last year, Costa and Ball, like the finishing was awful. Kraev started really well, scored a bunch of goals in the first few weeks, and then was not the same player after the World Cup break. Zavada was brilliant the whole way through, so no criticisms on Zavada, but he's coming into his second season where, on the one hand, he should be more like adapted to the culture and the football and all that. On the other hand, he's going to have a target on his back because teams know he scores almost all of the goals for this team. If you shut him down, perhaps you shut the Phoenix down. And that did kind of happen in this game. Like they didn't have very many opportunities to score at all. Zavada didn't hardly have anything. They struggled to create in a way that we probably expected they would struggle to create. And the hope is that because it's going to be a young team with a lot of inexperienced players, that they will, like the women's team did in those first 2 years, they will get considerably better from where they are in week 1 versus where they are mid-season versus where they are at the end of season. That was certainly the pattern for the women. Well, that's the hope for the men this year as well. But like I say, there is a solid core there. They've got a pretty strong first 11. They're going to need to find solutions in terms of their goal scoring, because that looks like it's going to be a major, it's going to be the major flaw with them. But you can get away with that a little bit more if you've got a solid defense that can withstand pressure, but also ease pressure by being able to knock the ball around and do that stuff you're talking about there. Like, we saw that from this team. I don't think they had that last year. I think Paulson, quite frankly, might just be a better goalkeeper than Ollie Sale already. Like, he's definitely got more pedigree than Sale had at a similar thing. And Sale did a job for a couple of years there, and he had this first season as a starter. He was brilliant. Paulson is far better with his feet. I don't know if you could say yet that he's as good of a shot stopper as Ollie Sale, but I think he might be. I'm not saying he's not a better shot stopper, because I watch, like, Giancarlo Italiano said that the reason Paulson got picked as the number 1 ahead of Jack Duncan, the Aussie sort of middling A-League goalkeeping sort of median talent that they signed in to be the barometer for Paulson, which is like, if he's better than Duncan, then it means he's a better than average A-League goalkeeper. If he's not, then it means he's worse than average at this point. It was like an easy way to test him, and he's come out on top of that. But Italiano said the reason he picked him is because of his ability with his feet. But what we saw in that game, along with that great ability with his feet, which I've seen from him in National League stuff as well for the reserves in the past, same thing he showed for the reserves in the past as well, was his incredible shot stopping. And what I hadn't really seen from him to the same extent, and what I guess is something he has been working on in the interim, is the season last year, well, 2 seasons as a backup for the first team, how good he was in the air. Like he just rushing out and take. It's not just that he was dealing with them, because you expect goalkeepers to be able to rush out and punch a ball away or to catch the crosses that float too much. It's not that he was dealing with them, it's how comfortable and assured he looked in dealing with them, which just gives you so much confidence. I think Paulson is now a better goalkeeper than he was when I last saw him playing extended football. And when I last saw him playing extended football, I thought this is one of the best goalkeeping prospects I've seen coming out of this country. So I think we're starting to see what that looks like now as he begins to settle into first team football. But I agree with you. I think Finn Surman deserves as much credit for that performance. The work he did as well, aerially, like the headers that he wins, fantastic. But that was always the strength of his game. You're also seeing a bit more skill on the ball, where he's been able to. He's not going to be like he's not going to be a superstar dribbling through folks or anything like that. But he is someone who, I mean, frankly, a defender at this level needs to be able to control and pass and pick the right options and not panic and do all that stuff. No dramas whatsoever with that. I actually thought he might have been slightly better at that than Scott Wooden was. And he's an import, which is a theme I might come back to when we talk about the women. But if the plan for the Phoenix is to develop their young dudes to be able to sell the best couple of them for transfer fees down the line, like they did with Kikache, like they did with Singh, like they did with Wayne, Alex Paulson and Finn Surman are absolutely the two guys who are next in line competing for that. There's no doubt about it. And I expect them not only to be starting pretty much every game this season, I expect them to be amongst the better players in their position in the A-League this season. I think those two are outstanding players who, frankly, give it a couple months, might just be regular always selections as well. There is a little bit of an open spot with the goalkeeping thing, less so center back, but a strong season from Surman would, start demanding things rather than there being an open spot for him. He can open it himself. He's a can opener. Those two players are the best talents coming out of the academy right now that are in the first team.
There was no way the Phoenix team from last season could have done what they did against the Wanderers, because I just remember
there would have been a stupid mistake or something that would have cost a goal. Yeah,
a stupid mistake without the ball for sure.
Yeah,
but also the amount of turnovers that would have come from the back, like whether it's Ollie Sale's goal kicks just going to no one, or the amount of errors on the ball that we saw from the centre backs and out of defense. There's no way they could have done that with the composure they did in this game against the Wanderers. So I think that
just on that, I think a lot of that goes towards the coaching as well, because I think Alex Rufer is the sort of CDM in that formation. Looked a different dude. Like under Tellai, it was a different style that they're playing. So it's not like this is a Rufer problem. It's just he's doing what's asked of him both times. Under Tellai, there was a lot of static, like control, pass, very, very simple stuff. It was a lot more fluid in this thing, and Rufer's out there like playing in different directions, not just playing the way he faces every time, and hitting some lovely balls over the top too. It's he's been capable of that, but the consistency of it in this game was pretty impressive. Even though I don't know that was the best strategy for them, but I guess early on you're just trying to stretch the field a little bit, so fair enough. But you did see, and having, who are the other midfielders, Pennington and Kryev, well, they're both dribblers. So it's not just control, pass, all your movement happens off the ball. It's not like it was under Tellai. It's not that anymore. These are guys who can dribble the ball, like carry the ball forward into space and attack and transition and that kind of stuff. So I think that's part of that as well, what you're saying. I think that's partly why is just a little bit more fluidity in midfield and just players with a slightly different skill set to be able to make the most of that.
What happened what caught your eye in the women's 3-0 victory? No issues scoring goals now for women's footballers around the world.
No, I mean, the funny thing about it, which isn't the first thing that caught my eye. The first thing that caught my eye in that game was Macy Fraser's dummy. The way the little shot fake that she has, and you see it clearly for the goal that she scored. When that happened, I was thinking that must have been Hope Breslin because they both had colored boots on. And it just looked like import silkiness. The control, the little fake to beat the defender, create room to shoot, and then just a clinical bottom corner finish, edge of the box. I just assumed that was the import who did that, but it wasn't. And that's actually a theme that I had throughout that game of like there'd be times when they were attacking and Emma Main's running on one side, Breslin's running on the other side. I'm thinking, pass to Emma Main because I feel more confident instinctively that she'll do something. And then you got Macy Fraser showing like import level skills there. That was like the sixth time she threw that shot fake in during the game. They fell for it every time. It's an unreal little skill. Like, no one ever picked it. It's just like watching Steph Curry just pull up and shoot early. It's like, he's going to do it, but you don't seem to be helpless to stop him doing it. I mean, you seem to be helpless to stop him from doing it. And there's just a few times in there where I'm like, I expect the imports to settle in and get better. I think Speckmeyer had quite a good game actually, and the goalkeeper Foster's been very good in both games. Davidson and Breslin are still settling in. I expect them to get a lot better, but in this game, I think less of a criticism of them and more a level of where the Kiwi footballers are that have been elevated to this team is that I didn't notice a difference. For all the talk about the imports coming in and raising the level, it's Macy Fraser is the one who's setting the tone for them there. And the thing I thought about just giving it more time is that realization that I don't think they played that well in this game. I don't think that was anywhere near their potential of what they're capable of. I mean, it was another game without Annalie Longo for starters, but they just, I don't know, like they were under pressure for times, particularly first half. There were a lot of mistakes, giving the ball away, passes not going to feet, and stuff where they could have been punished if they were playing a team like Melbourne City again. That might have been the case. They might have been 2-0 down at halftime. But that's a big deal for this team. Like they scored their goals in the last half hour. I think 2 of them were in the last 10 minutes. They sort of ran up the score, but they ran up the score because they were running rampant at that point because they'd earned themselves that right by just sticking around and then scoring a goal and then asking the other team to take more risks and then punishing them when they did. But it wasn't a flawless 90-minute performance. And I think in the past, when this team has won games, it has required something close to a flawless 90-minute performance. And the fact that we got a 3-0 win away from home against Western Sydney, where they didn't have that, I mean, that just speaks to levels of where this team are at compared to last year. It's like the growth that they've had from season to season is that they don't have to be perfect to win games. They can be all right and then still smoke a team just in a game where it's like there's still heaps of stuff that I'm sure they're talking about right now in video sessions about like, well, we should have done better here. We should have done better there. We should have done better there. And they won 3-0. And they won 3-0 playing some fun football and scoring some really nice goals too. I'm super excited where they're going.
National League, big thing / things. What's top of mind after another weekend in National League foosball?
Well, Auckland City won again because they always win. And I think a pattern of Auckland City's play that stands out is something because I've been watching them like they didn't have to do the comeback win this time, but they did, require a couple of second half goals to get past decent Eastern Suburbs team. And it just they have the depth on the bench, which is a big part of this, but they just seem to outlast teams. Like they almost don't even try to score goals in the first half. Like even if they're losing 2-0 in the first half, they don't really care. It's like they just know that they can finish a team off in the latter stages of a game, and they keep doing it week after week. It's crazy. There's like a robot just on the chart. It's a bloody Terminator. But yeah, I mean, it's a hell of a week because you also in the women's round you also had the rematch of last year's grand final, which is by far the most notable result of the weekend because last year's grand final, Eastern Suburbs rolled Western Springs 4-0. They were clearly the two best teams leading into the final, but Suburbs just smoked them when it mattered. Devon Jackson scored a hat trick. She's now playing for Canberra United in the A-League. This game on a Friday night, Western Springs won 4-0. They flipped the script around and just turned like Suburbs have lost a lot of players and they had their left back having to play in centre back and she made a mistake for the first goal, I think it was. But then also there was a goal that Western Springs scored, which is one of the best goals I've seen all season. It was just a passing move that started from a goal kick. They go out to the right, they move back across the field to the left. Little 1-2 from their left back, moving into midfield and then chipping over the top and then across the far post and a tap in of the like a lot of the best goals that we've seen so far this season, particularly in the women's comps, have been long range bangers and there's been some incredible ones. This was a tap in that was as good as that because of I think it was 13 passes and 10 different players who touched the ball in that move, going from goal kick to tap in. Like you're starting 6 yards off the goal line at one end, you're ending 6 yards off the goal line at the other end. It's the perfect goal. Like I know people sometimes criticize Manchester City, like the standard bearers, best team in men's football right now, for scoring a lot of tap-ins. It's like that's exactly what you want. Make it as easy as possible for the striker by how good the play is up to that point, and not leaving the striker to have to do everything, even though Erling Haaland could still do everything if he needed to. That's what that was that goal from Western Springs, which was finished off by Ella Jerez, who's 15-year-old phenomenon coming through, a dribbler with step overs. Also in the same under-16s team recently as Pia Vlock from Auckland United, who had another little cameo off the bench, and I'm waiting for her to start getting opportunities to start for United there, because the crispness of her passing is something that only like if you're hitting just accurate passes that smoothly, that firmly right to people's feet, that's a sign of like just great technique, great composure, great quality. Like that's a simple thing you can see. Like this is a really good player. They just don't miss their passes. Nothing's underhit, overhit. Everything is just perfectly crisp. It's a 15-year-old doing that. 15-year-old who has also shown like creative ability and other little cameos and was excellent in that under-16s team. I'm always trying to keep an eye out on these National League things for the next sort of the next big thing kind of players, and Ella Jerez and Pia Vlock are the two that have stood out so far from the women's competition. Vlock hasn't played as much, Jerez a little bit more, but yeah, man, there's some talent there.
Seems like we always just swing back around to that, like how like these sports just have so much talent coming through. Like we literally just talked about it in this one podcast. We're talking about the cricketers, talking about the rugby league of different players, sports, and now we're talking about the football players in the National League as well as the Wellington Phoenix. Like there are no issues with the youngsters coming through the Aotearoa pipelines in these respective sports, let alone, Kiwis don't play for the Breakers, but there's a lot of great Kiwi basketball talent on the rise as well, especially in the NBL teams. So I don't know. It just seems like we eventually just end up repeating ourselves. But it's just
but the one thing with the football stuff, players like Jerez and Vlock, and there's a sort of generation just a couple years older than them, which is like Millie Clegg and Ruby Nathan, and slightly older than that, Macy Fraser, Alyssa Wynnum kind of thing. There weren't players like that. Like there were good players, but there weren't players of that profile. Like this it's new that we've got this kind of scope of talent, but there are also different types of talent than what we've had in the past. And I think that's also true in these other sports as well. It's like bowlers swinging the ball both ways. It's halves coming, skillful halves, not just big dudes who can run hard, although we've got plenty of them. And also they do more than run hard. They offload and throw passes and play make from in their own way. Like it's the scope of the talent as well. It's not just the scope in terms of the amount, but the skill set, I suppose.
Cowabunga. That's the Niche Cast for Tuesday. We'll record our subscriber podcast tomorrow. We just did basically an hour and a half on Kiwi sports today, so who knows what we'll discuss stoppage time in the subscriber podcast tomorrow. And then we'll be back on Thursday with another Kiwi sports podcast. Looking forward to the weekend. So big up yourself, love yourself, kia kaha, stay beautiful, chur chur.